Wait, Qingyi can increase your team damage by over 50%. But what if I love my Ambi and don't want to replace her? Give me a reason to not pull for Qingyi. You can think of it this way. If you pull Qingyi, Ambi will have more time to rest, relax, and eat burgers, her favorite activity. Sometimes, love is about letting go and letting the one you love pursue what they truly enjoy and that which makes them happy. Hello, sweetisms! Welcome to my Qingyi release day guide. I'm going to start by answering 2 more questions I know a lot of you have. Afterwards, I will go into more details about her kit, gameplay, rotation tips, as well as my overall thoughts. A disclaimer, footage in this video comes from the Creator Experience server, so it's possible there are changes on release, but I will update in the comments if anything changes. Number 1. Should you pull Qingyi? My short answer is that I highly recommend her if you're not lacking a DPS, as I found her to be an S-tier stunner that can go on any attacker-based team. Her extra stun multiplier can increase your team damage by over 50% during enemy stun. I would think a bit more carefully though if you already have Ellen and Lycaon and want to focus on Anomaly teams next. Or if you don't like to mash your keys too much. More on that later. Number 2. Will you need her W engine? My short answer is that I don't think her W engine is that necessary. Lycaon's W engine works well on her, and the craftables are decent too. The overall damage increase from her W engine will usually be less than 10% since her team usually already has some bonus damage. In fact, I would recommend her M1 over her W engine if you want to invest a bit more into her. So, I really enjoyed playing Qingyi, and one big reason is that she feels like a new type of stun character, the on-field stunner that is fun and rewarding to play. Currently, all the other stunners we have are more like quick swap stunners. They rely mostly on their EX special combos for Daze, and apart from Lycaon, they also don't add a lot of damage for your main DPS. Some of them can execute longer combos. For instance, Lycaon can use his empowered basics for more days, and Ambi can basic 1-2-3 into EX or Thunderbolt. But one big issue is that most of their days is backloaded in the later hits of the combo and relies on their chain not getting interrupted. This can become difficult, especially as you challenge the higher endgame difficulties. The enemies are a lot more aggressive, and it can be hard to reach the last hits of the combo before the enemy either dashes away or launches an attack and you're forced to dodge. Qingyi, on the other hand, shines in 3 ways. Her kit rewards on-field time, and she is not punished for interrupting her attacks. Qingyi does not rely heavily on having her EX special up. Also, Qingyi can increase your team's damage by 50% during stun. Qingyi's main goal is to daze the enemy while applying subjugation stacks via her super basic attack. Subjugation stacks are what increases the enemy's stun multiplier, and for simplicity's sake, I will refer to them as her stun stacks. Each stun stack increases the enemy's stun multiplier by 4%, up to a maximum of 20 stacks or 80% stun damage multiplier. This is a separate multiplier, and since enemies usually start with a set base stun multiplier around 150%, Qingyi's additional 80% means approximately a 53% damage increase during the stun window, which is huge. For reference, Lycaon only gives an extra 35%, which is only around a 23% damage increase. Let's take a closer look at Qingyi's kit. Qingyi's normal basic attack combo consists of 4 hits and looks like this. Her 3rd hit can be spammed repeatedly, and if you let go at any time, she'll finish with her 4th basic. However, if you wait a little bit and let go after you see this flash, she will go into an enhanced 4th basic that deals twice as much damage and daze as her normal one. Qingyi also has a super basic attack that can be activated after this gauge reaches at least 75%. Qingyi's gauge fills up whenever she deals electric damage to an enemy, and anytime it's above 75%, you can hold down attack to execute her super basic. The super basic attack is what applies stun stacks to the enemy and increases their stun multiplier. It consists of 5 rush attacks and 1 finishing attack, but all 6 attacks are executed with just 1 press down. If you ever let go of attack early, Qingyi will skip any remaining rush attacks and directly go into her finishing attack. Each rush attack applies 1 stun stack, and the finishing attack applies 5. Normal and elite enemies gain twice the amount of stacks, and since you need 20 stun stacks to max out her stun multiplier, it means that versus normal and elite enemies, Qingyi can max out her stun multiplier using 1 full super basic. Versus bosses, Qingyi will need 2 full super basic attacks. This kind of works out though, since bosses usually take a bit longer to stun. 3 tips I want to mention here regarding her basic combos. Her basic 3 is what you'll generally want to be using to build her gauge quickly, since gauge buildup appears to be tied to the number of hits. That's probably why they let us spam it. Also, even though you can use her super basic as soon as her gauge reaches 75%, for every additional percent over 75, it increases the damage and days of all the hits. So I recommend waiting until her gauge is almost full, since it doesn't take that much more time and is pretty good value. And it's generally better to overfill a little than fall just a bit short and be unable to launch her super attack. The 3rd tip is that you can directly go into her super basic attack during her basic 3 by holding down the attack button and skip her basic 4. Or you can let go of attack first, so Qingyi does her basic 4, and then you hold down attack after to go into the super basic. As for which one to use versus aggressive enemies, I recommend directly going into her super basic from basic 3, since you can always let go early to go into her finishing attack, which is an iframe. I'll go a bit more into detail on how this works in the next section. And versus more passive enemies, I recommend using her basic 4 first for more days. Remember, you can let go a bit earlier before the gauge fills up if you're planning to use her basic 4, since it deals electric damage as well and will add more charge. In terms of her game plan, Qingyi wants to on-field and spam her basic 3 and dodge counters to build enemy days along with her gauge. After filling up her gauge, she wants to use her super basic attack to apply stun stacks and add more days. Ideally, you want to aim for 1 super basic attack on normal and elite enemies, and 2 super basic attacks for bosses. Unlike other stunners, Qingyi has a lot of nice built-in mechanics to smoothen her rotation and gameplay experience. First, if you ever have to dodge while in the middle of your basic 3 combo, you can actually go right back into her basic 3. This applies to normal dodges as well as if you trigger her dodge counter. The second is that using her EX special will directly let you go into her basic 3 after. The normal special will not though, only the EX. The third is that her basic 3 now comes with a minor section effect, which is really nice for grouping smaller enemies. Another really useful and rewarding mechanic I wanted to mention involves Qingyi's super basic attack. As mentioned previously, Qingyi's super basic is a 6-hit combo that is executed with just 1 button press, by holding down attack after her gauge fills up. You are vulnerable during the first 5 attacks, but the finishing attack is an iframe. Letting go early means you skip any remaining rush attacks and will directly go into her finishing attack. And normally, you'll never want to let go early, since each rush attack will apply a stun stack, and cutting it short means fewer stun stacks on the enemy. But what if the enemy is about to attack? Turns out they actually made it so that if you let go of her attack button right before an enemy attack, Qingyi will automatically trigger a perfect dodge, and she will directly apply the max of 10 stun stacks to the enemy, even though she might have only gotten out, let's say, 1 rush attack. This is pretty insane, and one cool thing you can do with this is, if you have assist points up, while you're in the middle of Qingyi's super basic, if you see an incoming enemy attack, you can simply tap your character swap to immediately end her super basic early, triggering both her perfect dodge and the defense assist of your next on-field character, all at the same time. This is actually pretty easy to do and quite rewarding. All in all, it feels like the character designers tried quite a bit to make Qingyi feel good to play. In terms of Qingyi's dupes and her W engine, I feel like Qingyi is pretty complete at M0, R0. If you want to pull for M1 or R1, I recommend her M1 over her R1, especially if you're pairing her with Nicole, since defense reduction becomes better the more you stack. Having full gauge at the beginning of combat so she can directly go into her super basic along with an extra 30% charging speed is also a pretty nice quality of life. In general, I recommend her M1 over her R1. Both are about a 10% damage increase, but M1 gives extra utility. M2 is probably also around a 10% damage increase. M4 I don't think is particularly that good, and the M6 is mostly if you really like Qingyi. To summarize, I think Qingyi is a premium stunner whose mechanics make on-field time feel fun and rewarding. She also brings an insane 50% damage increase to the team during enemy stun. If you have Zhuyan and enjoy playing her, I highly recommend picking up a Qingyi, even if you already have Coletta, Ambi, Lycaon. As a burst DPS, Zhuyan benefits heavily from high enemy stun uptime, and Qingyi versus Ambi on the team can feel like night and day. Also, since Qingyi's passive activates as long as there is any attacker on the team, she is quite a bit better than all the other stunners for all of the attackers, except for Ellen. For Ellen specifically, I found that she benefits a lot from more on-field time, and Lycaon's damage increase for Ellen is similar to Qingyi's, so I personally prefer Lycaon, especially for M0 Ellens. But if you don't have Lycaon, you can definitely consider a Qingyi for Ellen as well. With that said, Qingyi is definitely not perfect and has some downsides. You really need to mash the attack button to continue her basic 3 combo, which can become tiring and wear you out after a while. I kind of wish they made it so her basic 3 combo can be continued by holding down an attack button, but then there's the whole attack into her super basic, so maybe they ran out of button options. Her basic 3 and normal basic 4 do not actually count as a heavy attack, so even after you stun an enemy, you won't be able to trigger a chain attack using Qingyi unless you use her enhanced basic 4, her super basic, or her special. This could be considered a good thing in some cases if you still need to apply some extra stun stacks, because it lets you do another super basic before triggering the chain. On a similar note, sometimes Qingyi can deal too much daze and stun the enemy before any of her super basic attacks hit. It can also be easy to miss her super basics versus quick moving enemies. One tip here though is you can switch her off of 4-piece impact and on-field her more so she's building more gauge. Qingyi doesn't synergize that well with Anomaly characters who seem to benefit more from playing with each other plus another support. With upcoming Jane Doe, Burness, Caesar, it's possible that Qingyi is not the one you'll want on those Anomaly teams. So something to keep in mind if you're thinking about playing more Anomaly characters. Lastly, I found that Qingyi herself does not deal that much damage. On the Qingyi plus Zhuyan team, for instance, Qingyi's damage will only make up for around 10 to 15%, because Zhuyan just does so much damage during the stun phase, and that's with a pretty optimal crit damage build Qingyi. On the bright side, it also means you don't really have to look for crit damage substats. I recommend 4-piece impact, but the 2-piece can be pretty flexible between 2-piece ER, 2-piece crit, 2-piece anomaly, 2-piece electric, etc. I think that's it for now. I originally wanted to make a shorter guide, but I had a lot of information I wanted to share, and I did really enjoy playing Qingyi. Thank you for watching or listening along. Let me know in the comments if you have any other questions. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on stream or in my next video. I plan to cover Anomaly next, especially since Jane Doe is coming up soon.